Okay, you are recording.
All right, very good. Madam Clerk, can we have a call to order, please?
You can.
Can we take roll, please?
Yes. Dr. Kelly.
Here.
Mr. McKenna.
Here.
Ms. Olson will be joining the board approximately 2:30. Ms. Pallison.
Here.
All right, you have a quorum.
Okay, so our first item of business is, let's see, we've got 2024 as the first one listed, but Dee, should we perhaps rearrange those? Is that the idea?
Off mood. Okay. Yes. And actually, you'll see JB, that's Jason Bockenstadt, is on the call as a representative of the mayor. So yeah, if we could do 2025 first.
Okay, very good. So let's do that one. So let's if everyone does anyone need a couple minutes to read that request, or does everyone have a chance to take a look at it? Okay, good. So let's dive in then. Does anyone have any questions? Again, we have Jason, I'm sorry, Bachman, is it?
Bockenstedt.
Bockenstedt. Thanks, Jason. This is Terry Kelly from the Board of Ethics. Thanks so much for coming in today to answer questions about this opinion. What questions do people have for Jason here about this matter?
Can I say, I thought that one of the questions, because when we did this for Mayor Sullivan, was sort of a comparison or just an idea of the actual dollar amounts that were involved. I mean, it's what is it? His percentage times, well, never, I won't go into that, but this is something you might want to know sometime in the future. And I think, Jason, you just told me about it, that all in all, the mayor from these 3 restaurants has made last year about $65,000 was his dividend or his distribution, whatever it is. And about $58,000 was from Spenard Roadhouse. And then the other ones were the balance between 65 and 58. So that's his income involved. That may or may not be one of your factors, but because when we looked at Sullivan, remember, he was getting from that restaurant behind City Hall like $2,000 every so often. It was like absolutely de minimis. Of course, in here you would translate it down to, yeah, but we're talking about, you know, a $15,000 grant. So if it's a 10% interest, that's $1,500 now. And of course, when you get grant money, it's not going out as a dividend, but even if you did a rough correlation like that, and then like a 4% one is, you know, really a very small amount as well. But I just wanted to bring up those numbers now in case the board thought it was relevant. I'm not as convinced it is in this particular case, but.
So do you just
Jason, if you could talk.
I'm sorry, Terry, go ahead.
I was going to say, Jason, I guess if you could talk about what role does the mayor play? So the Code of Ethics says a public servant cannot take official action that could directly affect the request for services, the award, execution, or administration. Could you talk a little bit about what role the mayor would have in any of those things, the request, award, execution, or administration of these grants?
Jason, would you mind jumping in on that?
Sure. Happy to. And maybe I'll take it a step back even further and just explain kind of what the Assembly did and how they came to approving this particular grant program. So I think everyone is well aware that as part of the larger CARES Act package that passed Congress back in March, the municipality received just over $156 million to be used towards providing a number of different things within the municipality. One of those is relief to small businesses that have been impacted as a result of COVID-19. So through a iterative and public process between the administration and the assembly, we came up with a package that divvied up the money in a number of different ways. One of them was providing quite a bit of small business relief in a number of different packages that don't really bear on this one. But right around the time when this package was being put together, the mayor instituted EO 15, which ultimately closed bars completely during the month of August, or almost the entire month of August, and substantially closed indoor dining for restaurants. It certainly still allowed outdoor dining as well as takeout and delivery. So during one of the assembly meetings, an amendment was offered that I believe it was sponsored by John Weddleton, but a few of the other assembly members sponsored it. And what they did was they pulled some funding from a couple of different other programs, as well as from the contingency fund that we had built that was set aside to help us deal with issues that might develop in October and November, and developed this hospitality industry program that totaled about $7.1 million, a little north of that. And that was approved on the amendment basis, and then ultimately the full package was approved later that evening that kind of appropriated all of the money and then told the administration to, go out and disperse. So we worked with the industry, and by us, I mean specifically the people within the administration, to include Chris Schutte, who is the director of the Office of Community and Economic Development, myself, Carolyn Hall, who's the communications director, met with CHAR, met with the hospitality organizations, with the Brewers Guild, to essentially come up with a program that directed this money in a way that the most would be given to those that were most severely impacted by EO 15. So bars that are just bars would be eligible for up to $30,000. Bars and restaurants, or restaurants that have bars in them that certainly were closed indoor but still were allowed for outdoor and takeout and delivery, would be eligible for up to $15,000. And then there's a smaller award for those that had little to no impact by EO 15 that would be eligible for up to $7,000. Again, the administration worked with the industry to come up with those dollar amounts that were ultimately agreed on, and we are finalizing kind of the grant agreement with the organization to disperse those funds. And I think the only other thing that I would say is there have in the past been restrictions on receiving. If you have received federal funds, maybe you were disqualified from receiving a state program or vice versa. We made the decision with municipal funds that there are no restrictions, that if you received PPP or EIDL or are in line to receive anything from the state, that you are not disqualified from also receiving our funding. And then the final thing that I would add is the areas that these businesses have to spend the money on are payroll for their employees. They can pay vendors or pay their mortgage or their rent. They're precluded from paying taxes with it. That's actually one of the things that's not allowed under kind of the Treasury guidance that comes along with that. So the three big areas that we are allowing them to spend this money on, and they have to self-certify that this is where they're spending it, is on, again, payroll, paying vendors for food or other supplies that they're ordering, or on their mortgage or their rent.
So could you walk me through when people apply for these grants? So a restaurant or a bar applies for the grant. What's the role of the mayor's office in, if any, in making the decision, you know, are you eligible for the grant? Yes, you are. Here's how much you're going to get. You know, things like that. What role does the mayor's office play?
There won't be any. Once we kind of have the grant agreement in place, it will be the organization that we give the money to that will make all of the decisions on, you know, do they meet the eligibility criteria that have been set out in it.
Sorry if I missed it. Who's that organization that's going to make that decision?
So we are working with and finalizing the agreement with CHAR, which is kind of the larger kind of industry organization.
And Jason, what does CHAR stand for? I probably should know that.
Oh man, you're gonna make me.
It's okay.
I can find it really quickly.
And just a quick question, as you were kind of describing, you know, from the beginning to sort of the end point, and the point where we're at right now is that CHAR will be, it sounds like CHAR will be making the ultimate determination as to which restaurants and bars will be receiving the individual grants, correct?
Yes, based on the criteria that are set up, and we've tried to keep it very simple, so that there isn't a lot of confusion or you know, other issues that pop up. I think we've seen from other states and within this state that the more complicated you make the criteria, the more complicated you make the application process, the harder it is for you know, these groups to make those determinations. So we've tried to make it as simple as possible based on you know, what your impact was as a result of Emergency Order 15.
So that's helpful. And if just stepping back to like the earlier part in the process, you know, initially you had mentioned that there was what, $100 million in state CARES Act funds that were provided to the municipality. And then I think you said that did the administration put a proposal together for the Assembly's approval as to how that $150 million would be divvied up amongst various industries?
Yes. So we received the 156 million, and then we through working with the Assembly through a number of public work sessions, all-day work sessions that we had with the Assembly, as well as receiving phone calls and emails from you know, individuals and groups within the community, we came up with a package, and I can run through a couple of them, but a couple of the big ones are certainly there's small business relief that is broader than what we're talking about here. This is focused just on the hospitality industry and the impact that COVID and EO15 specifically had on them. There's broader small business relief that is available. There's about $23 million that we put into a rental and mortgage assistance program to provide obviously assistance for people to stay in their homes that have been impacted by COVID. We've provided a little over $15 million in a variety of childcare relief programs. And then certainly there's money that we're holding off to the side for our required FEMA match that we have for all of the FEMA expenses that we are incurring that are reimbursable. And then a number of other things. We have a larger nonprofit stimulus. We have a couple of jobs programs that we have put together that we'll work on projects and put people that have been laid off or lost their job as a result of COVID back to work, at least in a short-term capacity. And then there are a couple of other programs that revolve around providing additional capacity, in our homeless or domestic violence shelters that we have. Some money that would go towards allowing the food bank to expand their operations. They've seen a big increase in the request for services. So it's a very broad and wide-ranging package that was put together over a couple of weeks and a couple of very public work sessions. But I think I've kind of described very broadly what is included in there.
And you said that was kind of an iterative process between the administration and the assembly, and ultimately about 7 million was the final collective number for distribution to restaurants and bars that had that were not able to provide dine-in service during that time frame.
And that doesn't mean that some of them aren't potentially eligible for some of the other grant programs that are set up, but this one was specifically just for the hospitality industry.
And was, like, Jason, just the 7 million, was there some like rough sketch, like, well, we think the average loss to a restaurant under this circumstance was, $15,000 or $100,000 or whatever? Was there some, kind of, I'm sure there was a basis for how the $7 million figure was determined.
So there was a little bit of that. The industry, broadly speaking, this includes CHAR, the Brewers Guild, and the broader hospitality industry, I believe, sent a request both to the administration and the assembly asking for, I believe, it was about $21 million to be set aside for this. But certainly, I think one of the things that we've repeatedly said, both from an administration and assembly perspective, is that there's no way that with 156 million that we could ever make everyone whole that has been impacted. So we tried to come up with what we believed was a fair distribution to all of the different industries that have been impacted. And I ultimately think that 7 million was just kind of what this particular, I believe it was, like I said, I think it was John Weddleton that came up with this proposal or this amendment. And I believe it was just him kind of piecing together and pulling a little bit from other areas, and then ultimately taking some from the contingency fund that we have set up, and just saying, this is what I believe we can do, and ultimately that was approved by the assembly.
Got it. Thank you.
Jason, can I ask two quick questions? The amount of money that was ultimately allocated, the 7 million, was that subject to the assembly's final approval after this series of meetings?
Yes.
Okay. And then the eligibility criteria, who formulated that and then ultimately approved it?
So that was in consultation with the hospitality industry between Chris Schutte and myself. We've had a lot of meetings with them to come up with what we believe would be fair distribution of those funds based on the impacts that this industry has had. So we took a lot of input from the industry on it, and believe that everyone was in agreement that this was a fair distribution or fair breakdown of the grant eligibility and the dollar amounts.
And then did that eligibility criteria also go through the assembly approval process, or that was not part of that?
No, the eligibility criteria did not. What I will say is, broadly speaking, we are trying very hard to follow the Treasury guidance that is out there that kind of lays out, in relatively broad terms, what this money can be used for in terms of grants to small businesses. And like I said, I think the big one that is not allowed is it can't be used to pay property taxes or other taxes with it. It has to be used for payroll or paying your rent or things like that. So we've tried very hard on the eligibility side to keep it aligned with the Treasury guidance.
Jason, are there, just a quick question, are there, if any restaurant that kind of falls within the kind of rubric of a restaurant that was, not able to provide dine-in service for a period of time, would any restaurant be eligible for a grant from, that CARES funding, so long as it was used to meet those, for those purposes that you outlined for us? Or are there some restaurants that are, will restaurants be competing with each other based on certain criteria that make some restaurants more eligible than others, if you know what I'm saying, or better than others in the eyes of the folks who are going to be making the decision about the issuance of the grant?
No, I believe that there shouldn't be any competing nature. I think one of the other things that I would add is, as we worked through this with the industry, kind of the dollar amounts and the number of entities that fall into each of those broad categories, we know that number, right? We can go and look and say, this number of businesses are just bars, because we can look at the number of state licenses in Anchorage that are awarded. So when we came up with the dollar amounts for this program, it was essentially us saying every single restaurant or bar will get something. There will not have to be some competing and we'll have to go to some random selection. We set this up so that the 7.1 million would allow every single bar or restaurant, depending on which category you qualified for based on EO15, that you would get something.
Thanks so much. That's really helpful.
So yeah, I definitely think so. I was wondering.
This might, Jason, this is Terry. This might be a kind of conjectural question, but the restaurants that the mayor has ownership interest in terms of the eligibility requirements, are those restaurants like sort of pretty standard kinds of restaurants that would fit into just about any reasonable eligibility criteria? Or is there something quirky about those restaurants and there's something somewhat unusual about the eligibility requirement that allows them to qualify?
No, I believe that they are operated just as any other normal restaurant, and there was nothing quirky about having them qualify. I think they squarely fit into kind of the restaurant business. So they would be the same as any other place.
Does the mayor have any connection with CHAR?
No.
And Jason, is it true that any eligible or any restaurant that applies gets the full, is it 15,000, or is it that CHAR might decide to give them only a portion of that based on some showing that they have made, or do you know?
They would, if they apply, they would get the full amount.
Okay. Thanks.
CHAR does not get to make the decision on, well, we think you only deserve 7,500. It's the amount that is that would be in the grant agreement would say, as long as that business self-certifies that they are using that money, that they've been impacted by COVID, they've been impacted by EO15, and that they're using the funds on kind of those broad criteria that I said, they'll self-certify that. And once that happens, that basically ends the process, and then the money would be distributed to them in the full amount.
Got it.
Well, I don't have any other questions. Does anyone else have any questions?
Nope.
All right, good. Well, I'm going to suggest, I know we've just finished talking to Jason here, but we only have Marcia for about 30 minutes or so. So if we have no more questions for Jason, I was going to suggest that we free him from the ethics board and switch gears and talk about our other request for advisory opinion. And then when Marcia has to depart, we can come back to this one and discuss the things that we heard. Does that sound reasonable to people?
Makes sense to me.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, let's do that. Jason, thank you. I really appreciate your time and the information you provided us. That was very helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you. And if you need anything else, Dee knows how to get a hold of me, and I can hop on anytime between now and 4 o'clock.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
All right, let's switch gears then and take a look at our other request for advisory opinion. This is, what are we looking at? What is this one? This one is...
And Mr. Chair, this next one is a confidential.
I was about to say that. Yeah, it looks like this one's confidential. So do we have a motion to move into executive session to discuss 2020-4? Not all
I'll
at
make that
once. I
motion.
can't hear you when you all scream out at once. Okay,
I'll make that
Jack.
motion.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, very good. Let's move into executive. Yeah, let's move into executive session for that one. Madam Clerk, can we move into an executive session?
You can, Mr. Chair. I'm going to stop and start your recording.
Thank you.